All right. Well, we're going to continue our series this morning in Philippians and everyday joy. Before we get there, there's a couple things to mention. First of all, thank you for your prayers for Larry Whitney, and glad that he is at home and on the mend. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So continued prayers, absolutely. So please continue to lift up Larry and Pat. And and then today, Katie this is her last Sunday with us. You guys know my daughter Caitlin, and so she's heading off to camp to serve up at Fairhavens again. So this is her last Sunday with us. So so make sure you give her a hug. She loves hugs. So anyway, we're going to continue in our Philippians series, and I came across a quote. We're going to talk about friendships this week and today, and I came across this quote. It was by a woman named Linda Grayson, and I think specifically of Scott this morning because of something he received here at church, and that is this: nothing is better than a friend unless it's a friend with chocolate. I know, see the Toblerone bar, that's right. Nothing better than a friend unless it's a friend with chocolate, and in Lois's case, has to be dark chocolate. We're going to talk about friendships today, because friendships are vitally important in our life as we journey through this earth. Whether you're a follower of Jesus, whether you're not a follower of Jesus, we all need friendships. We all need people that are close to us, and there's different levels of friendships, right? There's those that are kind of on they're acquaintances. We know them, we see them once in a while. Then there's kind of a more of a closer where we see them more regularly, and then there's kind of that maybe those two or three people who are close friends. And maybe it's just one person that in your life is that friend. And so we want to look at some of the things this morning, because there can be great joy in our lives that comes from friendships. I mean, when we see our friend, that puts a smile on our face. We kind of feel that uptick of joy and happiness, and we feel that man, I just love hanging out with this person because they make me laugh, or they listen to me when I need to tell them something, or spill bare my soul before them. And so everyday joy can come from healthy, mutual, Christ-centered friendships. And what we see this morning is we see Paul kind of introducing us to a couple of his friends. And through those, how he talks about them and what he says about them, we come across several characteristics of what a good friend is, of what we should be looking for in a friendship. And so we want to break into that this morning. So if you have your Bibles open to Philippians chapter 2, we're going to look at verses 19 to 30, and welcome to those who are joining us online as well. Again, if you are in the area, we would love to see you in person, but thank you for joining us online, and drop us a line if you get a chance, a connection card through our website. So what we want to do is look at friendships this morning. There's some characteristics that we see with Paul in his relationships and with two specific guys. There's kind of 6 things that maybe we should be looking for in those. And we're not talking about acquaintances. We're not talking about that second level relationship. We're talking about, I guess, what we would call our best friend or our best friends. Some of the key characteristics that can bring everyday joy to our hearts and to our lives. So I want to introduce you to Paul's first friend that he brings up. This is Timothy. Timothy is about 22 years old when this is written, roughly in his early 20s. He is a church planter, and he is one of Paul's good friends. What we know through the rest of the New Testament about Timothy is that he's a major part of Paul's ministry. We see them traveling often. We see Paul talking about Timothy. We know that he was raised by his grandmother in particular, but also his parents. He wrote 2 books in the New Testament, 1st and 2nd Timothy. And he planted churches with Paul, and we think that he was one of the ones that went over to Asia, kind of that area over there. And then finally, he met his death in around 97 AD. He was stoned to death for his faith. And so this is Timothy. And there's some things that we can see with Paul and Timothy in their relationships that Paul talks about here that we can bring into our relationships, that we should be looking for. And these things are generally across the board. So whether you're here this morning and you're a follower of Jesus, whether you're not a follower of Jesus, whether you're watching online and you're just kind of checking it out, these are kind of general things that we should be looking for in friends because they're good characteristics. They're good qualities to have in a friend. So the first thing is this, is that we all need friends who are genuine. One of the top things that we need in our friendships is we need people who are genuine. So let's look at that. Philippians chapter 2, verses 19 to 30, it says this, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon. He says, for I have no one like him who will be genuinely concerned for your welfare. That's one of the statements he makes about him. He says, I have nobody like Timothy. Timothy is unlike anybody else that I have that I can send to you. He is unique. There is no one like him in his qualities and in what he does and his genuineness, his genuine concern. He longed to send Timothy to the Philippians. And it shows us that Paul and Timothy had a deep bond, a deep relationship. And one of the things that I forgot to mention at the beginning of this series is the church in Philippi it's not a trouble church. Oftentimes we see the letters in the New Testament that are written to the churches. There's a problem going on that the writer is writing specifically to deal with. Really, this letter to the church in Philippi is just a letter of praise and a letter of thanksgiving, really. There's no real issues right now that are going on. God is working, good things are happening, and things were good. So he says there's no one like him, no one better to send and to serve you. The word genuine here, it means that he showed authenticity. Timothy showed authenticity. He was genuine. He was real when you had a conversation with him in this relationship with Paul and Timothy. He was real. He didn't pull any punches. He was up front and he showed you how he really felt. There was no masks that Timothy wore. He didn't wear masks. You know, one of the things that we often do in our North American world and culture is we like to put masks on. How are you doing today? Oh, everything's just great. Meanwhile, if you look in the background, there's fire and volcanoes, and right? We like to wear masks in our North American culture because we don't necessarily like to be genuine, or we don't like to see others to see what life is really like for us. In other passages, it says that they were like a kindred spirit. They were like-minded. And this gives the idea that they were kind of that kindred spirit. How many of you, it's probably more of a female thing. How many females have ever met kind of that kindred spirit? Another female that you just really connect with. And there's just that bond there. It's like you think alike. You have the same thoughts. You have the same interests. You have the same attitude towards things. Well, that's what Paul and Timothy were like. That's the relationship that they had. And as well, Paul knew that because Timothy was genuine, he would genuinely care for the well-being of the Philippians when he eventually sent him. Paul knew that Timothy would be perfect for them. And this speaks to Paul's friendship with them. This speaks to Paul's friendship with the Philippians. He would never send anyone who would do harm because he loved the Philippian church so much. He worried for them. He was anxious for them, their well-being and their welfare. Genuine friends do this. They're friends who take off the masks. They're friends who you can be yourself around. You don't have to hide. You can just be yourself, who God created you to be. For those of us who have hair, it's this idea that you can let your hair down with them. Right? You can just be yourself. You can be silly. You can be goofy. You can be serious. There's no consequence or judgment coming the other way. And it goes vice versa. That's the type of relationship that a genuine relationship and friendship is. There's honesty, there's transparency, and when needed, there's support. One of the characteristics that we need to be looking for in our good friends is people who are genuine, people who are authentic, people that we can be ourselves around without the masks. So do you have someone like that in your life? Do you have someone who is very genuine with you? Someone who you can let your hair down with? Someone like a Timothy? So that's the first characteristic. The second one is this. Again, we see this through Timothy. We all need friends who are people of action. Okay, we need people who are people of action. Friends who are not just saying things and never following through, but friends who are people who take action when it's required. It says this, "For they all seek their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ, but you know Timothy's proven worth. How as a son with a father, he has served with me in the gospel." So again, he's telling us, my relationship with Timothy is a relationship of action. I trust Timothy. He has proven his worth. So what does that mean? Well, it means that he actually did stuff. He just didn't say nice words or fancy words. And there's a lot of people, even in our relationships, that seek their own interests. And around the world, there's people who are just selfish and seek for themselves. And have you ever had a friend like that? A friendship or a relationship where you just kept giving and giving and giving, and they never reciprocated. There was nothing coming the other way. It's not a good relationship to be in. But here he's saying, Timothy, he seeks after God and he seeks after the things of God. And because of this, he is a person of action. He has traveled with me. He has proven himself time and time again through his action. Not just the words or not just fancy sayings, but action that goes beyond just their work for the kingdom. It goes into their friendship. Timothy, a proven man of action. Timothy, a proven man of action, which spoke louder than his words. You have a friend like that? A friend who's willing to go beyond the words or the platitudes? A friend who's going or willing to follow through on what they say they're going to do? Do you have a friend that's willing to go the extra mile? A friend that's willing to step into and not just say the words, but be proactive in your friendship. A friend who is helpful. A friend who is willing to give you the shirt off their back. Do you have that person in your life? Would that describe your close friend network? Would that describe your best friend? See, we need friends who are genuine. We need friends who are also people of action. They're not just saying nice things, but they actually generally believe it and they follow through with action. We all need friends like that. As we continue in the passage, we go back to verse 21 and 22. We all need friends who are not only people of action, who are not only genuine, but now he talks about this. We all need friends who are mutually interested in spiritual growth. Now listen, this is where your relationship with Jesus comes in. So if you're a follower of Jesus, this is vitally important. We need friends who are mutually interested in spiritual growth. He says this, "But you know Timothy's proven worth, how as a son with a father, he has served with me in the gospel. I hope therefore to send him just as soon as I see how it will go with me." So Paul's still waiting to find out what's going to happen to him. He doesn't know if he's going to live or die. He's saying, listen, as soon as I find out what's happening, I am sending Timothy. Timothy is leaving me. He's coming to you. And I trust the Lord, shortly I myself will come also. So we go back to this idea of the Father-Son meaning. What does this mean? Well, back in Jesus' day, or back in Paul's day when this was written, sons generally followed their fathers into whatever profession it was they were doing. We have a couple of examples of that. First of all, we have Jesus and his father Joseph. We say Jesus was a word worker. If you go back to the original meaning, he was more of a builder. So Jesus would have built houses. He would have built furniture. Like there would have been it's a wider range than just simply he was a woodworker or a carpenter. He was a builder of things. And his father was a builder of things. And so Jesus, following through the Jewish tradition, would have stepped in and followed his father through the business. We also have the example of the sons of thunder, James and John. Their fishing business was a family business. So they would have followed their father into the fishing industry. And it was quite well off, actually, from what we understand. And so they naturally refer to this connection within their cultures. Sons learning from their fathers. And what this means in a spiritual sense is this, is you have Paul and Timothy. Paul, who is the older, the wiser, the one who's the father figure. And you have Timothy, who's more like the son figure, desiring to follow after Paul's example. But what they're doing in the meantime is they were both spiritually sharpening each other, mutually growing together in their walk with Jesus. Paul, the mature one, mentoring Timothy. Both friends, both with a desire to achieve the same thing, a closer relationship with God. Spiritual growth. There's a few proverbs to go to here quickly. Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. That's what they were doing. Proverbs 27:6 says this, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. So even in this context, as Paul and Timothy are going back and forth, sharpening iron, helping each other grow spiritually, even within this, they're being honest with each other. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. That's referring to when a friend is being honest with you and saying, hey, listen, I see some things in your life, and you need to work on this. That's what we need when it comes to our closest friends. People who are spiritually interested in growing. They're willing to say the difficult thing that you need to hear. Mutually interested in spiritual growth. Accountability. Willing to say the hard or the difficult things when the time comes. Do you have a friend like that? Do you have a relationship, someone in your life that is what you do? The same goal of growing deeper in your relationship. So that's Timothy. That's Paul's relationship with Timothy and Timothy's relationship with Paul. Genuine. Mutually desiring to grow in their faith. And willing to take action, not just say the words. But that's not the only friend that we're introduced to in this passage. We're introduced to this little known character named Epaphroditus. Epaphroditus, let me introduce you to him. He was most likely a former Roman soldier. He would have been a leader in the church in Philippi. And after he retired from the military, he would have been sent to Philippi to, most likely to help the city build. And at some point, he becomes a follower of Jesus. Most believe he's a church leader there. He's a member and a leader in the Philippian church. He met Paul on a missions trip. He's a Greek convert, so non-Jewish convert to Christianity. And he was sent by the Philippian church to go to Rome to minister to Paul. So that's Epaphroditus. So what do we learn from his relationship? What do we learn from what Paul says about him? Well, first of all, we learn this, that we all need friends who are reliable. Friends who are reliable. It says this, I have thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and my worker and fellow soldier, and your messenger and minister to my need. So what's happened is, he meets Epaphroditus in Philippi. He's a leader in the church. Philippi finds out Paul's in prison. They say, hey, let's send our most reliable guy to go to Paul to minister to him while he's in jail. That's a journey of over 800 miles there and another 800 miles back. So you want someone who's going to go the distance. You want someone who's going to be willing to go, travel that distance, be away from family, be away from friends, be away from the church for who knows how long, with the main goal of going into Rome, which is a hostile to Christianity city, to a place where his friend is under arrest and guarded by Roman soldiers so that he can minister to him. If you're sending someone into that context, you want someone who's reliable. You want someone that you can count on to go and fulfill his mission, and that was to care for Paul. He was a guy that was trusted to carry out a task in the midst, hundreds of miles away, in the midst of hostile territory. The Philippians trusted him, and Paul had trusted him. He says to him, he's a fellow brother, a fellow worker, a fellow soldier. He's the type of guy that you would want to be in the trenches with when you're doing battle. He's the guy that you would want to be in the trenches with. He's reliable. He's a reliable guy. Proverbs 17:17 says this, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born in adversity. A brother is born in adversity. I came across a story this week just to show the reliability of friends. It's a story that comes out of World War I. Maybe you've heard it before. But these two guys had enlisted together. And as they enlisted together, they had trained together, they had become really good friends. They were shipped overseas, and they were in the trenches together. Well, during an attack, barbed wire everywhere, one friend gets out in there and he gets shot up. And he's stuck out in no man's land in the barbed wire. So they retreat back to the trenches, leaving this guy out there. And his friend desired to go out across no man's land through the barbed wire to rescue his friend. Well, the sergeant wouldn't let him do that. Yanked him back in, says, too late, this guy's dead. Just leave him out there. You'll just get killed yourself. Well, the officer turns his back, and that gave the man time to jump out of the trench, go out into no man's land, grab the guy from the barbed wire, his friend, carry him back, and as they plunged into the trench, he was carrying his dead friend's body. And then he himself was mortally wounded. And the sergeant looked at both of them. He said, what a waste. He's dead and you're dying. It just wasn't worth it. And the man said with his last breath, it was definitely worth it. When I got to him, the only thing that he said was this, I knew you'd come. Now, I don't know if that's a true story. It certainly is a great story that points out this concept of a friend loving at all times and a brother who was there, born in adversity. A guy who is reliable, that you know no matter what happens is going to be there. No matter what you do, no matter how badly you mess up, no matter what your needs are, he will keep his promises and they will show up. Always there when you need them to be there. Are you that type of a friend? Do you have people in your life who are reliable, who you know man, when the rubber meets the road, they will be there right by my side. That is the characteristic of a relationship that we all need, and the kind of friend we need to be. We all need a friend who is reliable. We all need friends who are reliable. Then we all need friends who are kind-hearted. We all need friends who are kind-hearted. Epaphroditus is kind-hearted. Look at this. He says this, I have thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, so my brother and fellow worker, fellow soldier, and your messenger, and minister to me in need, to my needs. For he has been longing for you all and has been distressed because you heard that he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, near to death, but God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but also on me, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. I am more eager to send him, therefore, that you may rejoice at seeing him again, and that I may be less anxious. Epaphroditus was kind-hearted. Let's follow this along here. Epaphroditus is sent from Philippi to minister to Paul. While he's there, he gets sick. He falls ill. He almost dies, which is when Paul talks about double sorrow. Not only am I in prison, but I've also lost my best friend, Epaphroditus. But we see through his sickness how kind he actually is. It says that he is longing to be back home with his family, with his church family. It says that he's greatly distressed to be with them. He's longing, this intense craving. He loved his church family in Philippi, and they loved him. It's almost like he knows that even though he's sick, he knows that there's much more to do back in Philippi. There's more needs to meet. There's more to be done. It shows that even while he's sick, he is still kind-hearted. And then it says that he is distressed because what's happened is the Philippians get word that he's sick, but they don't know that he's better yet. And so he's actually more concerned that they're in Philippi worrying about him and being anxious about him, being worried that he's going to die, being worried that he's sick. He cared so much for them that the real burden was on his heart. He didn't want them to continue to worry about him. He didn't want to cause them undue worry or concern. He was a caring, kind-hearted friend to Paul and the Philippians. He was kind-hearted. What does that look like? Well, kind-heartedness, people that are helpful. People that maybe make you laugh or they put a smile on your face because you know they just have a good heart. They do little things in life. They're often generous and considerate of what it is you're going through. Those are kind-hearted friends. And finally this morning, we all need friends who are selfless. He says, I am more. So receive him in the Lord with all joy and honor such men. For he nearly died for the work of Christ, risking his life to complete what was lacking in your service to me. So what he's saying is this. He was selfless because he was willing to give up his life for serving me and serving Christ. He was a selfless man. Epaphroditus almost died for the work of Christ. So they say, rejoice at seeing him again. Friends reunited. Receive him with joy. Selfless friends like Epaphroditus. That means that we prioritize your needs and well-being over theirs without wanting anything in return. We see that in Philippians that we've already looked at. You see, daily joy can come from healthy, mutual, Christ-centered friendships. And we all need these types of people in our lives. And we should be those types of people, that type of a person in the lives of other people. So let's connect joy with friendships. These are the type of characteristics we need and we should be looking for in friends and how we should be as friends. Why? Well, because they encourage us. Those types of friendships where those things are involved, they encourage us. They believe in us. They fulfill their word and their actions. They're supportive. They want us to become better people. That should bring us joy. They also challenge us. They recognize our weaknesses. They recognize our deficiencies. They challenge us to embrace the changes that we need to make in our lives. Life-changing choices, healthy choices, choices that make us better spiritually, physically, emotionally. Then there are people who celebrate with us. They're the people that immediately call us when something good's happened. They're the people that we immediately tell when something good has happened. They celebrate with us. They're also the first people we call when something is not right. Those are the types of friends we need. And those types of friendships, with those characteristics, add joy to our lives. There was a study done I came across this week. Harvard Medical School did a study, and basically what they found was there was a direct correlation between the more friends we have, the more joyful and fulfilled life we will live. The more friends we have, the more joyful and fulfilled life we will live. There's a direct correlation there. That doesn't mean you have to have 1,000 friends. We all know that it's those close ones, those 2 or 3 people that are genuine, that fulfill those characteristics, are the core of what we need. So let's take this beyond the weekend. What can we do this week? Well, let's ask some questions as we wrap up this morning. First of all, do you have friends that look like Paul's? As you think about Timothy, as you think about Epaphroditus, do you have those types of friends in your life? It's pretty simple, yes or no. Yes, I do, or no, I don't. Do you have those types of friendships that look like Paul's? Second question is this: what do you need to change to be a friend like Timothy? Or a friend like Paul? Or a friend like Epaphroditus? What needs to change in your life so that you can be that type of friend that we've just described through those 6 characteristics? The third question is this: what's one thing this week I can do to be a better friend? Maybe it's take someone out for a coffee. Just hanging out with someone. Maybe it's words of encouragement. What can I do this week to be a better friend to someone in my friend group? And finally this morning, what's one thing I can do this week to build those characteristics into my own life and into my own friendships? How can I be more genuine? How can I be a person of action? How can I help someone grow in their faith? How can I be more reliable? How can I be more selfless? What needs to change in my life so I can be more kind-hearted towards someone? Because when we embrace these things and we look at these characteristics and we build them into our lives, guess what? We become more like Jesus. And that's the point, isn't it? To be more like him. Less of me, more like him. To be conformed to the image of Jesus. So what do I need to do this week in my life? Because daily joy can come from those types of relationships. When they're healthy, when they're mutual, going back and forth, not just one-sided. When they're Christ-centered friendships, they can bring great joy to our lives. Guys, let's pray together. Father, thank you for all that you have done. Lord, thank you for this thing that we call friendships. Lord, for giving us people who are close to us that we can care for and love and have good times with. We can go through life and journey through life with them. Lord, they're there to support us. We're there to support them, that we can be real and authentic. And so, Father, I pray this morning that each one of us would chase after at least one relationship that's like that. One relationship where we're chasing after, like-minded, chasing after those same things. And so, Father, I pray this morning, Lord, for those who are maybe feeling lonely and they look at that list and say, well, I don't have any good friends. I really have a large group of friends, but none of them would specifically fill that role. Lord, may you bring that person into our lives, or make us aware that there's one of our friends that could fulfill that role, and vice versa. Because, God, we see through Paul's example of friends we need to be. Characteristics in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.